Welcome into the Awesemo.com NASCAR Live Before a Lock shows. We're here to get you for today's NASCAR race. Of course, we are sponsored by PrizePicks. Come here later on the show, talk about some prop plays over at PrizePicks you'll want to check out. Of course, as always, I am joined by Chris Pennell. Chris, always great to be here on a Sunday afternoon talking NASCAR DFS with you. And this is a track now where we have got plenty of dominator points. We've got a driver at the top end that is going to be someone that everyone's going to get to because he is all the way at the back. So, man, what's kind of your general thoughts today about this race?
Yeah, what's up, Jason? Looking forward to today's race. It was fun the past 2 weeks at Bristol Dirt, Talladega, but those are two pretty crazy, chaotic tracks that are really hard to know what's going to happen. Nice to get back to somewhat of a normal track here at Dover where we can focus back on dominators. But we do have a very interesting slate here. Like you mentioned, we have several good drivers in the back and one really good one, a guy that I roster a lot so far this season, William Byron, but you have his two teammates up front, Kyle Larson, Chase Elliott, who can soak up a lot of dominator points. So it's kind of a, do you want to focus on the guy in the back more, or do you want to focus on the guys up front where they don't have the high floors like William Byron, but they have very high ceilings as well? So it should be a fun one to break down today.
Yeah, when we talk about roster construction, the first thing is the fact that we've got 280 dominator points available over on DraftKings, 40 over on FanDuel. And I know by watching your preview video, one of the things that about this race in terms of, roster construction, I was with, dominators and place differential, but you also mentioned about the fact of the Hendrick cars are cars that you're targeting today.
Yeah, Hendrick cars are definitely something I want to be a part of here. They've just been excellent at Dover, and even just looking past track history, they showed up in practice too. Kyle Larson was arguably the best car in practice. Chase Elliott right there with him. We didn't get anything from William Byron just because he had his issue in practice, and that's why you're seeing that 33rd position that he is starting in today, which makes him a massive place differential, also a very popular play today. You also have Alex Bowman, the most recent race winner here, and these guys were excellent last season. So hard not to like all the Hendrick drivers, but you are paying a premium for them today. There is no discount whatsoever.
One thing we do got to mention, rain is in the forecast today, so a 50% chance of rain, something to throw out there. Competition caution will be at lap 40. Two drivers to the back of the field. Really doesn't matter based on where they're started. Josh Blucke, who was starting in the back anyway, and also William Byron, who was starting 33rd. We'll get into William Byron here momentarily. In terms of a dominator build, two or three dominators, what do you think likely is the path today?
I'm thinking with the way pricing is shaked out, it's going to be a bit of a two-dom build day. You can stretch that to three if you throw in a guy like Ross Chastain as a potential third dominator, because he's only $8,600 over on DraftKings, $9K over on FanDuel. I would say Tyler Reddick is also a potential guy that you could roster as your third dominator, but the way he's starting today in 26, he's more of a place defensive guy rather than a guy getting up front. So for me, the majority of my lineups will have at least two of like Larson, Elliott, Byron, Blaney, and Bowman today.
Also, Kurt Busch is going to the rear for unapproved adjustments. That just came down there from Bob Pockras. Appreciate you, Jorge. I appreciate you in the super chat. We'll get right into your super chat, man. I appreciate it there. He goes, thanks for tips in advance. Any suggestions on roster constructions on large GPP on DraftKings for 20 entry lineups only in particular groups you must have across 20 or top drivers to must be in all?
So if you're playing DraftKings tournaments today, you're going to want those dominators. Yes, there is plenty of good place differential plays. You have William Byron, Joey Logano, Tyler Reddick. These guys are excellent plays today, but you have to make sure you pair them with at least one dominator. I can see a scenario where you roster one guy up front, like a Kyle Larson or Chase Elliott, pair him up with William Byron because they kind of balance quite nicely, where Larson can lead half the race and then Byron's a contender for the second portion of that race. But if you were playing tournaments today, you're 100% going to need at least one dominator, preferably two. And don't be afraid to go double punt today. A lot of people are going to do that. It's not a bad thing. And by punt, I do not mean the BJ McLeod or Josh Bilicki's of the world. I'm talking Harrison Burton, McDowell, Gillen. It's totally fine to do that today with the way pricing is shaked out.
Yeah, of course, we'll talk about that as we do go on. Of course, talking about the upper tier salary. So we'll look at the drivers who are 9K and above. So we've got Kyle Larson, Chase Elliott, William Byron, Joey Logano, Ryan Blaney, Alex Bowman, Martin Truex Jr., Denny Hamlin, Kevin Harvick, and Kyle Busch. I guess we'll start at the top here with Kyle Larson. Obviously, he is someone you're going to be looking at today. Starting third here, 11-8 on DraftKings, 14,000 over on FanDuel. And of course, if you're also a Plus member, you can look at that top driver tool. And I mean, look, the projection's great. I mean, he's going to have decent amount of ownership. His top 6 percentage is good as well. And also one of the, you're looking at one of the better dominator plays today.
Yeah, it's basically a coin flip between the 200 drivers up top today with Kyle Larson or Chase Elliott. I think they both have just about the same upside to dominate. If I had to pick one, if I was forced to, I have a slight lean to Kyle Larson. He's excellent at Dover. He's excellent at similar track types, which Dover is a pretty unique track. But I do like to draw some comparisons to Bristol and Darlington. You can maybe even throw in Nashville last year, which Kyle Larson did dominate that race. So he pretty much checks every single box for me. I know he hasn't quite been the Kyle Larson of the 2021 season, but he's still been pretty good this year with 3 top 5s. How's a win? He was first and second in all the practice numbers from the 10 to 20 lap, right up there with Chase Elliott. Starting in third, he's got good track position to work with. I mean, I see no reason why Kyle Larson can't get a front return to his 2021 ways today.
And of course, you mentioned about the Hendrick cars, Chase Elliott there. He's starting fourth, 11,300 over there on DraftKings. Obviously going to be another play that people are going to be looking at today.
Yeah, he was just about as fast as Kyle Larson in practice and was actually faster in the 15 and 20 lap than Kyle Larson. They both have great long run cars. It's honestly very hard to pick one or the other. I would say Kyle Larson's the 1A and Chase Elliott is the 1B here. Both could be in the optimal lineup today. I would not be surprised if Larson led 200, Elliott led 150, and maybe we see a third guy get into the mix. But Dover's been a great track for Elliott. He's good at Bristol, which is, Dover's kind of big. Bristol at very similar play to Larson. I have very split exposure on the two, but if I'm playing cash games, I have a slightly into Larson, and I have slightly more exposure myself on Larson.
Of course, when we're talking about cash games, I don't know how you avoid William Byron today. Starting 33rd, 11,000 on DraftKings, 13,000 on FanDuel. I mean, just looks like a great play today.
Yeah, he's a guy who had a lot of interest heading into the weekend. I believe he was on the top 5 picks video for my Awesemo. I'm pretty sure he was on there. I know I was in love with Hendrick, but $11,000. It's a pretty penny to pay for William Byron, but he's been underpriced, it feels like, all year, and he just keeps exceeding expectations. And now starting in 33rd, yes, he is going to a backup car. Some people have voiced their concerns about it, but he should still be a top 5 contender at the end of the day. I mean, you got to think, backup car for William Byron is better than pretty much the entire field. And he still has some decent odds to win the race in Vegas. It's not like he's going to be thrown into the back of them and get stuck in the mud. He should be just fine. The competition caution should help him get regrouped and get closer to the front there anyway. And the thing is with William Byron is he makes for an interesting tournament fade, because if, let's say, Larson and Elliott get up front and dominate, their ceilings will be higher than William Byron. He has a very safe floor. He can very easily score you over 70 points. But if Elliott and Larson come out, a large chunk of laps, they could both get over 100 points. And by that point, William Byron's probably not cracking the optimal lineup. It'll still be a good play, but it makes a little bit of sense to be heavier on the guys up front rather than William Byron in tournaments. Cash games, easy play. Don't even think about it.
To me, when I look at these top 3 guys, I think it just kind of comes to the equation of if you're going to put all 3 of these guys together, you're really going dumpster diving. But the question really becomes is, and I'm sure a lot of people who are watching are probably having this equation of, okay, who do I pair up with who?
Yeah, so if I'm playing cash games, I know Phil was talking about this on Twitter. He's at Race Sheets. He kind of broke this down, but just to put it out here on the show, he did a poll earlier, and a lot of people are going to go with the 3 guys up top with Kyle Larson, Chase Elliott, William Byron. But if you were doing that, the 3 most expensive drivers on the slate, you have to go with 3 of some of the cheapest drivers on the slate with Michael McDowell, Todd Gillen, Harrison Burton. For me personally, I don't like being that top heavy in cash games. I like 2 of the top 3, and William Byron's got to be 1. So then it comes down to, do you want to pair him up with Chase Elliott or Kyle Larson? Personally, I prefer the Kyle Larson route. And then I like kind of getting to the mid-range with a guy like Tyler Reddick, who offers maybe not race-winning potential today, but top 10 upside starting in 26. He's at a fair price point. It just feels a little bit better to be balanced, in my opinion, in cash games today.
Yeah, I literally just started creating a lineup just to see what the average remaining per driver would be. 5,300 if you put those 3 together. Mentioned a question from Discord from Mr. Moneybags. He says, Elliott or Byron, who scores more DraftKings points for a GPP?
If it's a tournament, I would lean towards Elliott. Byron does project slightly higher for me, but you got to keep in mind Elliott I'm a little bit conservative with projections, and I know over on Awesemo, place differential is always going to get beefed up as well. But Elliott's ceiling, I would say, is higher than Byron's today. I mean, the floor is there, but if I'm playing tournaments, I'd be more inclined to get to some Elliott.
Next up, let's go to Joey Logano. He is starting 22nd. He's 10,600 on DraftKings and 11,000 over on FanDuel.
So if you want to get away from the massive William Byron chalk today, Joey Logano is kind of the direct pivot. He's starting 11 spots further up, so he's not as appealing. They're in similar price ranges, but they're also not guys you're really rostering to get up front and lead early on because they're starting mid and in the back of the pack. But Joey Logano showed top 10 speeds in practice. He's got fine history at Dover. We know he's good at Bristol, which is, like I already mentioned, a track that I look at a little bit. Dover is pretty unique, so I don't want to draw too many comparisons there. But if you're just looking for the direct pivot at less than half the ownership, I think Logano's a fine play because he seems to have a strong car in practice and just a little bit cheaper, so he's easier to fit in.
Next up, you got the driver that'll be starting in the 5th position. That is Ryan Blaney, 10,300 on DraftKings, 12,000 over there on FanDuel. And one of the things of when I create my spreadsheet for this show, I just highlight certain things. And one of the things I highlight about Ryan Blaney is where we see him as a potential dominator.
Yeah, I can certainly get behind some Ryan Blaney in tournaments. I'm not going to get there in cash games, but starting in 5th, he was fast in practice. P2 in the 5, P4 in the 10, and P3 in the 15. His history at Dover is not very good, but that really hasn't mattered so far this season, which I haven't really cared about track history too much anyway. If we cared about track history too much, we wouldn't have played Ryan Blaney at Richmond, which was a track he dominated earlier this season. Doesn't really have great numbers at all here at Dover, though, so I'm really hoping people kind of shy away from that. If you're looking at the past 6 races, Blaney doesn't even have a top 10 at Dover. 5 top 15s, but not 1 top 10, only 6.2 laps led per race. Doesn't matter at all to me. I think he's one of the better tournament plays. Not going to be nearly as high owned for me as far as my Hendrick exposure from Byron, Elliott, and Larson, but I still like getting to a decent chunk of Blaney today.
Next up, we got Alex Bowman. He is starting 6th, 10,100 over on DraftKings, 12,500 on FanDuel. Of course, there's another Hendrick card for you.
Yeah, and he's a recent race winner here. Hendrick was so good at Dover last season, and Bowman's very good at Dover in general. 4 top 5s, past 6 races, which was tied for the most of all drivers. The problem is we usually get Bowman at a much cheaper price point, like in the upper 8K to 9K range. We are paying over $10,000 for Alex Bowman today. So it's going to be hard to get to him if you're already jamming in the other Hendrick cars. So he's going to be a bit of the forgotten guy here, but he should still be in your dominator group. I'm not getting to a ton of Bowman, but I think over 25% still a good range to be in because, I mean, if you like all the Hendrick cars, there's no reason why Bowman should be off your radar. You should still be a top 5 contender today with a chance of getting up front.
I know when I was looking at some of the content we had over Awesemo.com today, Phil had a betting article, and one of the drivers he threw out there as potentially to win this race, which was at 10-1, was Martin Truex Jr. He's starting 18th, 9,800 on DraftKings, 11,500 on FanDuel.
Yeah, Martin Truex Jr. has an excellent history here at Dover. There is no arguing that. But my strategy this year has been if JGR is bad in practice, they have not been that strong during the race. And he was 23rd in the 5 lap in practice. We didn't get anything outside of that. And he's starting in 18th. The price looks nice. $9,800 for Martin Truex at Dover. Normally, I would be all about that. But this year with the next gen car, it has been completely different. And starting in 18th, I think he's kind of stuck in that 12th place range all day. I think he will improve upon at 18th. But if you're paying nearly $10,000 for someone, you need the upside to get up front, like guys like Joey Logano and William Byron can do. So I'm personally not getting too much Truex at all today.
Be sure to smash that like button. Subscribe also right here on YouTube so you keep up with all of our shows, DFS offers, giveaways, and so much more. Of course, once you subscribe, hit that notification button so you get alerts for when a show is live here on the channel. Of course, we got you covered for all sports when it comes to NBA, MLB, NHL. We've got all here over at Awesemo.com. Move over to the man that will be starting second, Denny Hamlin. He is 9,500 on DraftKings, 10,500 on FanDuel. Obviously starting second here in this first stage. Could he potentially be a guy that can, take the lead right here at the start?
It's certainly possible. And we also have the guy in the pole, Chris Buescher. So it's not like he has super strong competition at the very beginning to dominate. The thing is, he's another JGR car, and he was not very strong in practice. 18th in the 5 lap, 18th in the 10. We have the competition caution on lap 40. So even if he does get up front, I'd say there's a decent chance he could end up getting shuffled back. And plus, the row right behind them, we have the Hendrick stable of Kyle Larson, Chase Elliott, the 2 best cars in practice yesterday. So yeah, he might grab the lead early on, but is he going to stay up front long enough to be in the optimal lineup? The price is nice, but man, I'm just not getting that much Denny Hamlin today. If he was fast in practice, it would be a different story. I know he's great at Dover, but I'm going to view him similar to Martin Truex. Not that they're starting even close to each other, but they didn't show me much in practice. So I don't think I'm going to play too much of him today.
Then we got Kevin Harvick. He is starting 11th, 9,300 over on DraftKings, 10,000 on FanDuel.
Yeah, just looking at track history at Dover, he's been excellent here, one of the absolute best drivers, but times have changed. Kevin Harvick is not the old Kevin Harvick, where a couple years past, he was kind of like Kyle Larson last year, was just winning just about half the races, it seemed like. But the price point is nice at $9,300, starting at 11th. He's a guy where I think he can contend for a top 8, top 5 today, but I have a hard time seeing him get up front. Didn't seem like he had top shelf speed in practice, was top 12, top 8, and 6 in the 15 lap, which is fine. But it'd be fine if he was in the lower 8K range, like he has been a couple of races this year. Now $9,300, he's kind of getting priced out for me. I still have a little bit of Kevin Harvick because he has been solid this year, but he's not someone I'm really expecting to dominate.
Kyle Busch is the last one here that's in the 9K and above range. He's 9,100 DraftKings, 9,500 over on FanDuel, starting 10th.
Yeah, so of all the JGR cars, it looks like Kyle Busch has had the fastest one so far this weekend. Looking at practice, top 8 in the 5 lap, 5th in the 10 and 15. It was P3 in the 20 lap, which is only behind Kyle Larson and Chase Elliott. I think this is a fine price point. We know Kyle Busch is one of the most talented drivers in NASCAR, which I've been betting on talent so far and the next gen cars. So I think at $9,100, it's a pretty nice discount on Kyle Busch and someone I think is worth taking a few shots on.
Jeff, appreciate you in the super chat. He says best dominator and best value for a DraftKings high. I'm thinking he's high single entry. He says high school single entry. So I'm guessing a little grammar there. But in terms of, the dominators, obviously, I think that you got to look at Larson, Elliott. Have got to be your top 2, right?
Yeah, and if I had to pick one, it's going to be Kyle Larson. But those are definitely the 2 clear top cut dominators on the slate. And as far as a cheap guy goes, Harrison Burton's the one I'm getting to the most.
Of course, get access to all the great Awesemo tools and content for nearly every DFS sport out there with an Awesemo Plus weekly pass. Get that for $29.95. Gives you full access to all the premium content tools on Awesemo.com, including player projections, ownership projections, lineup builder, and so much more. And of course, if you're just looking to play NASCAR DFS, you can sign up for one of our Awesemo Plus NASCAR packs for low as $9.95 weekly. Of course, you want to add on Fantasy Cruncher to your account. That's going to help you out so much. Stop guessing. Start winning. Join Awesemo Plus today. Let's move into the mid-tier here. So we'll talk about the guys that are in the 8 and 6K range. So we got Tyler Reddick, Ross Chastain, Chase Briscoe, Christopher Bell, Daniel Suarez, Brad Keselowski, Austin Dillon, Kurt Busch, Austin Cindric, Bubba Wallace, Ricky Stenhouse Jr., Eric Jones, Eric Amarola, Chris Buescher, AJ Allmendinger, and Cole Custer. Tyler Reddick starting 26. So there's where we get that PD discussion here, and he is going to be a popular play today.
Yeah, he's one of my favorite plays on both sites today. He's the same price on DK and FanDuel. He's on my main lineup on both sites. So I'm pretty heavily invested in Tyler Reddick today, but he's been one of the best drivers in NASCAR this year. He's super talented. He's below 9K, starting in 26. Hard not to see him gaining close to 15 spots in this race. We know he's a guy that can always pick up fast laps. He's just been super fast so far this year. Unless he wrecks, he's going to be a good play today. I just have a hard time seeing him get stuck in 20th place. He should be fast.
Jorge, I appreciate you in the super chat. He says, who would you try to avoid or expose less in 20 DraftKings GPP lineups? And who are your top 3 value plays less than 7K?
So guys I'm not getting to up top are Martin Truex Jr. and Denny Hamlin. It's hard for me to trust the JGR cars this year when they don't really show me too much in practice. There's a chance they could be fine, but I'd rather take my bets on the Hendrick cars, which have shown time and time again. They got a ton of speed and they showed it in practice. And even Ryan Blaney, he's been super fast this year. So JGR, besides Kyle Busch, I'm not really getting too much of. And as far as the value plays, they're pretty obvious down low, but it's Burton, it's Todd Gilliland, and then you can kind of take your pick between a guy like Michael McDowell or Ty Dillon.
Next up, we've got Ross Chastain. He is starting 7th, 8,600 on DraftKings, 9,000 over there on FanDuel. I saw a video the other day where he was talking about it. There was a point that he didn't know if he'd win a NASCAR race.
Yeah.
And now he's like, well, when my next one?
Right. And it's happening quite often. Ross Chastain has been arguably the best driver in NASCAR this year, right up there with a couple of guys. He has truly been elite so far this season. And at only $8,600, in the past, $8,600 Ross Chastain sounds terrible, but nowadays it seems like a really nice value. And starting in 7th, I mean, there's a chance he could dominate this race. I am doing him as a potential dominator. If I'm building dominator groups today, he is in that group despite him being pretty cheap. But to make those 3 builds work today, Ross Chastain's a pretty big part of that. So I like being overweight on Chastain on both sites. I think he's an excellent play for tournaments. Wouldn't get there in cash games, though.
Next up, we got Chase Briscoe. He is starting 23rd, 8,300 on DraftKings, 8,500 over on FanDuel.
Yeah, so the 3 drivers in a row we talked about, Reddick, Chastain, and Briscoe, they've been those 3 mid-range guys all year that have kind of surpassed expectations. And starting in 23rd, he's a pretty similar play to Tyler Reddick, not going to be quite as high owned, so he's a nice pivot right there. But Briscoe's a guy I can get behind a little bit of. Looking at the practice numbers, I don't believe we got anything in practice yet. We didn't even get a 5-lap run. So not a lot of data to work with Chase Briscoe. But with as good as he's been this year, I think he's definitely worth some shots, but he's not going to be as high owned for me as far as Chastain and Tyler Reddick goes.
Then you got Christopher Bell. He is starting 17th. He's 8,100 over on DraftKings, 8,000 on FanDuel.
Bell's someone I'm not really getting too much of today. He's starting at 17th. He's someone I typically try to get to at short flat tracks. That's obviously not the case today. He was 6th in the 5-lap in practice, which was nice, then fell to 17th in the 10-lap. Doesn't really have the greatest history at Dover. I know it's a smaller sample size, and if you're looking at similar track types, not too good for him either there. And so far this season, looking at 2022 so far, average finish of 19.6, running position of 15.7. Like it's fine when it's at a track type that he's excels at, but I'm not really seeing it today out of him.
Next up, we got a guy that is expected to be a low-owned driver today. That'll be Daniel Suarez, who is starting 8th, 7,900 on DraftKings, 7,200 on FanDuel.
Yeah, he's another guy we didn't get any practice data from, which I wasn't a big fan of what happened in practice because a lot of these guys didn't give us too much data to work with, and we had a couple of spin-outs, which did skew a few things for me. Daniel Suarez is just starting a little bit too far up front for me to even want to consider rostering. He is a guy that could contend in the top 10 all day, hang around, but his price is a little bit elevated, and I think there's definitely some better plays, and especially right below him.
Then when we talk about next, we got Brad Keselowski. He's starting 20, 7,700 on DraftKings, 7,800 on FanDuel.
I might surprise you a little bit with Brad Keselowski here, but I do kind of like him today. He was first in the 5-lap in practice, but it's mainly just because this 7K range is pretty bad outside of 2 plays. I love the guy we're about to talk about in a second, but Keselowski starting in 20th, I think he has top 15, top 12 upside today. It seems like he's got a decently fast car, and we don't have anything besides a 5-lap run. So we'll see what ends up happening over the long course of the race. But Dover's been a pretty good track for him. I know this season has gone terrible for Brad Keselowski, but it seems like the RFK cars have a little bit of speed. We saw his teammate Chris Buescher qualify on the pole. We don't need much out of Keselowski. I think he's a fine mid-range place differential play.
I heard you on another video talk about Brad. I was like, huh, okay, all right. We're not at Super Speedway. Okay. But you mentioned about, the guy that's right below him, you're going to like here today. Austin Dillon starting 24, 7,600 on DraftKings, 6,300 on FanDuel. Yeah. You're not the only one who likes it today.
Yeah. He's on my main lineup for both sites today. Love the price over on FanDuel, only $6,300, $7,600 on DraftKings, maybe a little bit harder to get to, but he's going to be popular today. For a good reason. He's starting in 24th. He is good just about everywhere. And as I always say, Austin Dillon is that consistent, boring play that you roster most weeks, and it just tends to pay off. He's never going to be flashy, but he seems to always be a top 15 contender. He's been in the top 20 at Dover the past 3 years here, each and every single time. And if you're looking at his numbers so far this season, he's been really good. Average finish inside the top 10, close to 50 DraftKings points per race, 3 top 10s and 2 top 5s. Starting in 24th, the practice wasn't amazing, but doesn't need to do too much here to pay off value.
Question we had over in Discord from MD says Keselowski or Austin Dillon.
Yeah, it's definitely very close between the two. I personally prefer Austin Dillon. As far as the projections go, I have them very, very close to each other, but is it slightly into Austin Dillon?
Next up, we have got Kurt Busch. Let's say it starts 60. We now know going to the back of the field here. 7,500 on DraftKings, 7,000 on FanDuel. Of course, we got to note here while he's going to the back of the field here, competition costing is at lap 40.
Yeah, Kurt Busch wasn't a guy I was really getting too much today, starting in 16th. Practice was fine. Looks like a top 12 car. We know he has a decent history at Dover. Man, it's just been tough for me to trust the Toyota so far this year. Mm-hmm. But going to the back definitely hurts him. I mean, it ruins the track position. I know a lot of drivers have been saying it's going to be hard to pass today. The faster cars are still going to pass throughout the field, but I do think this puts Kurt Busch in a hole. I didn't really like him too much before that. It makes me like him a little bit less now.
Then we got Austin Cindric. He is starting 12, 7,300 on DraftKings, 6,800 on FanDuel.
Yeah, kind of similar to Kurt Busch, where this 7K range outside of Austin, Dillon, Keselowski, I just don't really like. And the interesting thing about this range is roster construction wise, if you're going top heavy, and you obviously have to get the cheap drivers down low, you don't really land in this range too much outside of a couple of guys. So this is definitely going to be a forgotten about range. So if you're looking to get different today in this 7 to lower 8K range, it's definitely a decent spot to do that, to get different. Now, they're not going to look that great a place on paper like Austin Cindric. His car looked fine in practice. It seems like he could have top 12 speed, but man, it's been hard to really like Austin Cindric this year outside of a couple of races. An average finish of 17.2 with 2 top 15s. Starting in 12th, we're going to need him to hang around there and attempt for a top 10, which I'm not really sure we're going to see happen today.
Next up, we've got Bubba Wallace. He is starting 9th, 7,100 on DraftKings, 5,500 over on FanDuel.
Yeah, I'm not going to be playing Bubba today. Starting inside the top 10, 19th in the 5 lap, 13th in the 10 lap. He has to 100% hold his position. He's got to pretty much gain upon that to be in the optimal lineup. And I can easily name 10 drivers that's going to finish above Bubba Wallace today.
Next up, we've got Ricky Stenhouse Jr. He is starting 15, 7,000 on DraftKings, 5,800 over on FanDuel. And projections are not treating Ricky good today.
No, we can barely trust Ricky Stenhouse starting 30th. Now we're starting 15th at a non-play track. I just don't see how you could justify playing Stenhouse today. And over the course of his career, he's actually been okay at steep tracks, but the way he's performed this year and at $7,000, I just can't do it.
Next up, you got Eric Jones. I know there was a question in chat about your thoughts on Eric Jones here today. Started 25th, 6,800 on DraftKings, 5,000 on FanDuel.
Eric Jones is an interesting play today. He has a decent history at the tracks that are similar to Dover. He's actually been fine at Dover as well. But Darlington's been a good track for him. Bristol's been a pretty solid track for him. Starting in 25th, the price is up there a little bit, but he has shown flashes of speed this year. He's kind of hit or miss, but 20th in the 5 lap in practice. He's starting 25th. I think he's a fine PD play. I have very similar exposure to him and Eric Almirola today. They're not really flashing off the page for me, but with the way my roster construction works, these guys do land there a little bit. It's just cheap place, differential plays in the back.
Of course, Almirola is the next driver here. He's starting 27th, $200 cheaper than Eric Jones at 6,600 on DraftKings, and the same exact price over on FanDuel at 5,000.
Yeah, very similar plays here. I think I'd slightly prefer Eric Jones, but Almirola does have the 2 spots further back. Jones was just a little bit faster in practice. If you're looking at the 5 lap data, Almirola was 27th, which is right where he's starting. I have around 20% of both in tournaments today. It's just mainly for me just to get different down low because I don't play 100% of Burton, 100% of Dillon, so it just kind of gets filtered to all the other cheap PD guys.
Then we got the driver that is on the pole, and Chris Buescher, 6,400 on DraftKings, 6,000 over there on FanDuel. I guess really the question becomes is what happens if Chris Buescher can win stage 1?
If Chris Buescher dominates all of stage 1, I'd say there's a decent chance he'd be in the optimal lineup as long as he just doesn't crash out of the race. The competition caution definitely hurts Chris Buescher. I definitely think he'll get filtered out by then. And even then, you have Hamlin right beside him, who I know hasn't been that great this year, but it's still Denny Hamlin. And then right behind him, you have Kyle Larson, Chase Elliott, Bowman, Blaney. I know track position is going to be important here, but I gave Chris Buescher around 15 laps of my projections in around a 13th place finish. That's around 30 fantasy points, which is not bad at $6,400. But I could see this going south pretty quick. I'm personally underweight on Chris Buescher today. The upside is there. He is cheap, but I am not a big fan of it.
AJ Allmendinger, he is starting 19, 6,200 over on DraftKings at a low price on FanDuel at 3,500.
Yeah, I noticed he was popping up in my FanDuel crunches. Not a ton, but as far as like cheap drivers go, because I don't usually go dumpster diving on FanDuel, but I was getting a little bit of AJ Allmendinger because he's not that bad of a driver. And FanDuel has some interesting prices down low. Like his teammate Justin Haley is priced the same as a Josh Bilicki, Cody Ware type of driver, which really should not be the case. And Allmendinger in practice, he was 13th in the 5 lap and 6th in the 10 lap. I don't think he's a bad play down low. The problem is he's starting 19th, so you lose that place differential luster that a lot of these other cheap drivers have. So he's a tournament play only for me. We can get there in cash games, but if the speed's there in practice and translates into the race, price point looks pretty good.
Then we got Cole Custer. He's starting 30th, 6,100 on DraftKings, 4,500 over on FanDuel.
Yeah, he was someone I really liked heading into the weekend. I put him on the Awesemo top 5 picks video because of just how good he's been at Dover over the course of his career. It's a smaller sample size, but an average finish of 10.3 with a couple of top 10 finishes. The thing that I don't like is that he was 26 in the 5-lap in practice. Plus, I just have a bad history of rostering Cole Custer. But starting in 30th, he's cheap enough where he's definitely worth some shares down low.
Of course, we are sponsored by PrizePicks. And of course, when you sign up, deposit, and play over PrizePicks, you get 1 free month of Awesemo plus Platinum. Of course, you'll get an email within 24 to 40 hours how you can take advantage of that free month of Awesemo plus Platinum. Of course, be sure to use the promo code Awesemo for an instant first match deposit of up to $100. And there has been some movement on some of the props. I know Chris has liked here. William Byron, I want to say when you said to me the fantasy score was 59.5, it's now to 63.5. Are we starting to get to the point of William Byron that number's getting a little too high for an overplay there?
I still think 61.5 is fine. For him to get over 61, we're talking about a top 8 finish, which is what you would project for William Byron at a track like Dover. So if he just gets his averages,
now, is 63,
what is it?
63 and
63?
a half for Byron. Yeah.
Oh, shoot. Okay, well, now we're talking about a top 6 finish. So it gets a little bit steeper. I still think it's possible. I am projecting him for some fast laps, and I still think he has the potential to get up front. I will say 63.5 is not popping as much as a value as far as my projection model goes. So I might kind of shy away from that as much as I was. 61.5 sounded great. 59.5 sounded amazing. 63.5, we're starting to get priced out a little bit.
Ryan Blaney, that prop has not moved, still at 46.5 when we're talking about fantasy score.
Yeah, 46.5 for him means 45 points is what he would get if he finished second. So obviously I'm banking on dominator points and fast laps and laps said like that, which I do think he's got a very good chance of getting up front and downing today. Seems like he has a fast car in practice. If you were taking the over on the 46.5 for Ryan Blaney, you were banking on dominator points, but I certainly think that is possible with 400 laps that we have. He should be definitely picking up fast laps throughout the race. Another
line that's moved over about the past 2 hours or so is the Tyler Reddick prop, which was 42.5. It's now 44.5.
So now at 44.5, we're looking at a top 12-ish finish for Tyler Reddick, which is definitely within my projections. It was at 46.5 last night. It did go down, which I understand that because 46.5 is maybe a bit steep, but for a guy like Tyler Reddick starting all the way back in 26th, he doesn't have to do too much to hit value there. I think he could easily score over 50 DraftKings points today. He is someone I am projecting for fast laps throughout the race, so you're not solely banking on that top 12 finish. Fast laps can turn that into a top 15, top 14, depending on how many he gets throughout the race. And obviously, if he up front, it'd be way even easier. But I think Reddick can certainly get over that 44.5 prop.
Now, of course, be sure to check out our sponsor, PrizePicks, and of course, get 1 free month of Awesemo plus Platinum when you sign up, deposit, and play over at PrizePicks. Appreciate their support here of the Awesemo NASCAR Live Before Lock Show. Let's get into our low-tier salary drivers. This will be everyone that's under 6K. So it's Ty Dillon, Ryan Preece, Justin Haley, Todd Gillian, Michael McDowell, Harrison Burton, Corey LaJoy, Cody Ware, Josh Balicki, and BJ McLeod. I guess really we got to start about the drivers that people are going to target in this area when we're talking about where you're trying to get as many of these top high-end salary drivers. Obviously, you're looking at Todd and you're looking at Ed Burton as well.
Yeah, it's basically just because they're underpriced on this slate. They're starting 35th for Burton, starting 34th for Gillen. Harrison Burton's in a Wood Brothers car. I know it's not like a full-on Penske car, but it's just $5,000 is way too cheap for Harrison Burton. I know he has not been great this year, but as long as Burton and Gillen don't wreck, they're probably going to gain close to 10 spots today. And as long as you nail your dominators, as long as these guys just don't wreck and stay clean, they should be fine. I know they're very heavy chalk, but I think it's pretty good chalk today. It's just, they're going to project very well. They're too cheap and they're starting way far back.
Yeah. By the way, just looking at Bob's Twitter account, he put up a video of the radar saying, looks like potential for a shower after green flag, as long as it doesn't build a front of it. Sundown is at 7:55, so weather can make a delay here. So we'll see what happens there, but that is something to pay attention to when we talk about the weather here. Let's talk Ty Dillon, who's 5,900 here on DraftKings. He's starting 31st. He is one of those drivers we are projecting a little bit of ownership.
And it makes sense. Ty Dillon seems to always be in the same spot every single race where he's in the 5K range. He's starting around 31st to 33rd. He's not going to be as high owned as he usually is in this spot. If we didn't have Burton and Gillen being major chalk, I think Ty Dillon would be the guy a lot of people get to because the other two guys, Ryan Preece and Justin Haley, don't offer much place differential upside, but Dillon has shown so far this season that he has top 25 upside pretty much every single week. So if you're trying to get off the major chalk of Gil and Burton, while Dillon won't be completely forgotten about, he's someone that I'm going to get to quite a bit.
Two drivers that are not getting ownership is Ryan Preece and Justin Haley. Do you want to get there?
I do, actually. Looking at some of my sims as far as being optimal compared to their ownership, they're actually not as much for Ryan Preece, but Justin Haley has some pretty good positive leverage for me. And over on FanDuel, he is $2,500. So FanDuel pretty much thinks he's the same kind of driver as Josh Bilicki, BJ McLeod, and I just don't see that being the case. I mean, he's in the same equipment as AJ Allmendinger. These guys have top 20 upside, and Justin Haley does have track position to work with. This could help him stay in the lead lap longer than the other scrubs down low, which finishing position is very important over on FanDuel. I think on DK is a fine play too, just a lot riskier, but he showed top 15, top 10 speed in practice. And Ryan Preece, I know he's in a Rick Ware car in the number 15, which is never easy to trust, but they do have some Stuart Haas juice working for him this week. And in practice, he was somehow extremely fast. Preece is, as hard as it is to believe, P3 in the 5, P2 in the 10 lap, and then top 5 in the 15 and 20. That was probably the most surprising thing I saw in practice. I think just because of that, I have to get to some of him. And he is $2,000 on FanDuel, which I'm not sure I've ever seen a driver at 2K flat. So I think it's worth a couple shots.
What are you doing with Josh Bilicki today?
I am not touching. I don't play the scrubs at these kind of tracks. I know he's starting dead last. I can't do it.
I mean, he is one of the guys that we are seeing a little bit of ownership here. I mean, we always talk about groups. Are you setting a group to say, don't give me more than 2 of these guys?
You could set a group, but I personally just hit the X button on all 3 of them down low.
I've been known to do that as well. I've been known to do that as well. Of course, if you got any questions, line those up in chat. In terms of for our single entry players out there, our single bolt players out there, in terms of trying to get different today, how would you tell them a good path to getting different is today?
If you're just completely trying to get different, if you avoid the top 3 drivers today, Kyle Larson, Elliott William, Byron, you are going to be different enough to where you can build whatever you want with the rest of your lineup. I'm not saying it's maybe the best way to go, but it is a good way to get leverage if anything happens to Larson, Elliott, or Byron. If you are fading those 3, getting to guys like Blaney, Bowman, or maybe even Hamlin up front is probably the best way to do it. And then getting to Joey Logano as your pivot off of William Byron.
In terms of, obviously we talk with cash. Obviously, William Byron is kind of a guy that we're all going to, look, I completely expect when, the race starts here, it's just going to be a massive number in cash next to him. But we do put, with rain in the forecast, how does that change how you want to construct your lineups?
So it can go either way, because if rain does shorten the race, it would hurt William Byron's time to get up front, but at the same time, it neutralizes the dominator points up front as well, which is why it makes for kind of a conundrum building for weather. I personally would not change my lineups with the weather being potential at the end of the race. I would say it's probably going to help out William Byron because you still want that one dominator up front. So let's say you already have Kyle Larson, but if you're rostering Kyle Larson and Chase Elliott and happen to rain early, one of those 2 is not going to be a great plan. Probably there's a good chance that William Byron outscored one of them, whoever is not the guy up front dominating, because they're going to pick up their dominator points. So for me personally, it's just I want one of Larson and Elliott, that I like pairing with Byron as far as a cash game or single entry goes.
On the betting side, Kyle Larson is the betting favorite to win this race. I know I saw a number of plus 450. I mentioned about a line that Phil had brought up over at Awesemo.com of Mark Truex to win plus 1,000. Obviously, we both live in a state where we can't bet on the race, but do you kind of agree that Kyle Larson should be the favorite to win this race?
He certainly should. I mean, he checks every single box for me. Good at similar tracks, good in practice, good at Dover. Hendrick was amazing here last year. He's starting the closest to the front of all the Hendrick drivers. It makes all the sense in the world for Larson to be the favorite.
Of course, last 20 minutes of the show, be sure to line up all those questions. That's what we'll spend the last part of the show answering any questions that you have. Go to some questions that came in a little earlier. Cole was saying, what are the chances Hamlin leads 200 laps and Elliott and Larson have an average day?
There's always the chance for it. If you're just looking straight at the data points, everything, I'm very numbers based. It's not really telling me that Hamlin's going to be a huge dominator today. The one thing Hamlin has working in his favor is track history, which has not really shown to be too important this year. And he has good track position to start, but even then, the practice numbers aren't really showing that he's going to have a great long run car, which is what you're going to need for 400 laps.
Brody says, what's the best mid play for a single entry?
So as far as mid-range goes, I'll exclude the 8K range of Reddick and Chastain. So we'll kind of live in the 6K range here. I think Austin, Dillon, and Brett Keselowski are the two best mid-range. If I had to pick one, it would be Austin, Dillon.
Amarola or Briscoe?
For me, it would be Briscoe. He's a little bit, he's about over close to $2,000 more expensive. So could be might be a better 2v2 question, but I'd rather get the Briscoe for sure.
Of course, as I mentioned, if you got any questions, be sure to line those up in chat. We'll get to those as we do go on with this show. I'm not sure why someone asked about Sneaky Ghost. You think Ty Dillon could be a potential dominator today?
If Ty Dillon dominates today, I'm probably never doing another NASCAR show again.
Any truth to rumor that Priest is in SHR equipment? It would make a lot of sense given his practice speeds. No way he does that in Rick Ware equipment.
Yeah, it was prepared for Stuart Haas, so he definitely has some extra juice in it this weekend, which, I mean, it's just crazy the numbers he put up in practice for sure.
Thoughts on pairing Austin Dillon, Reddick, and Jones together?
Austin, Dillon, Reddick. Yeah, that's perfectly fine. I mean, all those guys have good place differential upside today. So making sure you get some other drivers closer to the front, mixed in with them is fine.
Next up says, thanks for the advice last week. My first try on DFS NASCAR, profited a bit and ready for this week. Any feelings on Alex Bowman today?
Alex Bowman, while he's not going to pop as much for me as the other Hendrick drivers, he's the one that might get forgotten about a little bit. So if you were playing tournaments, I think being overweight on him is a decent way to get different, even though he's not going to be low owned or anything. But just getting extra leverage on Bowman, maybe being slightly lower on a guy like Byron or Elliott could be a good way to go.
Last man in for a GPP on DraftKings, Allmendinger, Custer, or Ty Dillon?
For GPP, I'm tempted to say Allmendinger because he was a lot faster than Cole Custer in practice, but I still think I'm going to lean with Custer there.
Let's see here. Three drivers to have on FanDuel.
So over on FanDuel, I do have kind of a tight core. I am the highest right now on William Byron. It's kind of the obvious, but they're all very expensive. But it's Byron, Elliott, and Larson are my highest owned. But to not just say the three highest owned drivers or the three most expensive drivers, I have Byron, Larson, Reddick.
Next up, if you go Larson, Elliott, do you need a third dominator?
You do not, but you can throw in a guy like Chastain as a third level dominator, which even then Chastain's not really a guy that has to dominate the payoff. He can just get a top 5 finish with fast laps. So I wouldn't say you need a third guy.
Any thoughts on McDowell as a cheap driver in a DraftKings GPP?
Yeah, I don't like him as much as Burton or Gillen. He's going to be a little bit lower owned than those guys. He is starting about 5 or 6 spots further up. Looking at practice, he was 24th in the 5 lap, 15th in the 10. It's not terrible. I think McDowell is a fine play. Average finish at 25th here at Dover, but I'm not. He's just the guy that's to get different down low.
Of course, we love to see those winning screenshots once the race is over. We want to see you go into the Awesemo Hall of Fame today. Of course, you got to download that Awesemo avatar on your DFS profile. Tweet your wins at Awesemo HOF when you finish in the top 3 of a contest. With over 5,000 contestants, you'll win a free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum. Only one free month can be awarded to a user per calendar year. Congratulations there as Team Awesemo going in there on FanDuel and MLB with T McBee taking down $30,000. Kudos to you, Terry, with pulling that one off there. Also, Michael hitting first place over there in a FanDuel contest in NBA, taking on over $21,000. Kudos to you. Congratulations for your wins there. Also, WJ taking down second place in the MLB mini max there over on DraftKings. So kudos to you as well. Of course, we'll see you go into the Awesemo Hall of Fame later on today with those winning lineups. And we hope to see those winning lineups on our Twitter handles and mentions once the race is over. Get back to some of the questions that have come in here. Thoughts on Kyle Busch? Seems to have good track history and kind of priced down at 9,100. Could be a good sneaky play.
Yeah, of all the JGR cars, it looks like he had the best one in practice. I mean, he was top 8 across the board, top 5 in the long runs. And this is a good price point on Kyle Busch. And like I mentioned earlier, I like to bet on talent in these next-gen cars so far. And we know Kyle Busch, one of the most talented drivers in all of NASCAR, if not the most talented. $9,100 for him seems a bit cheap. You can get a discount from him off of guys like Hamlin and Truex. So I definitely like Kyle Busch the most of the JGR cars.
If you had to pivot away from one in the big single entry, is it Reddick, Austin Dillon, or Harrison Burton?
I think getting away from Harrison Burton might be the best because it's not going to be too costly. Like for Burton, we're not expecting him to get a top 15. I don't think he's going to make or break you today. Just pivoting from him to like a Corey LaJoy or Michael McDowell, I think is not going to kill you.
Briscoe or Brad on DraftKings?
I would take Briscoe there. You get a few spots further back, and he's definitely been a lot stronger this year.
By the way, just looked on the DraftKings app right now. Lock 3:09 p.m. Eastern time, so something to kind of think about. Starting if you got to get those CSVs in, you got to start lining those CSVs in now. Thoughts on Kevin Harvick?
Kevin Harvick is a similar play to Kevin Harvick or to Kyle Busch, in my opinion. Today, they're both around the same price tag, starting right next to each other. Both had decent enough practices. Kevin Harvick was a little bit slower. We know Harvick is excellent at Dover, and so far this year, I mean, Kevin Harvick has been a guy that you can count on. And it's funny, their numbers are about the same, him and Kyle Busch. Both are averaging right around 48 DraftKings points per race. Both have an average finish of 8.2. Both have running position around 12th. Both have one top 5, and both have similar amount of top 10s. I am viewing them as basically similar plays. I have about the same exact exposure to both of them. I prefer Kyle Busch. I think he's got a better chance to get a front and dominate. Meanwhile, Kevin Harvick, more of a guy that can kind of ride around the top 6, top 8 all day.
Next up, Logano or Byron?
Oh, for me, it's Byron. I understand in tournaments you're going to get lower ownership on Joey, but just projection wise, it's easily going to be Byron.
Next up, Alex Bowman going in any lineups?
Yeah, I have over 25% Alex Bowman today. Like I said, I love all the Hendrick cars, and Alex Bowman's actually my lowest owned of the Hendrick cars. So that tells you exactly how heavy I am on them. I'm very overexposed to Hendrick today.
Next up, Logano and Amarola or Elliott and McDowell in a FanDuel cash question.
Oh, I'm going to have to go with it was Logano and Amarola in the first one.
Yes.
I think I still got to go the Elliott route, even though it's Michael McDowell and FanDuel cash doesn't sound fun, but I got to get Elliott.
Is Blaney in play on FanDuel or a pivot off one of the guys up top?
Yeah, Blaney's a pretty good play over on FanDuel. You don't have quite the place differential of Joey Logano or William Byron, but he's someone that can honestly contend to win this race fast in practice. And $12,000 is maybe a bit steep, but he's cheaper than on the Hendrick cars.
Next up, any love for Kurt Busch?
I wasn't a big fan of him heading into today, and now he's going to the rear, which does kind of put him in a bit of a hole. He loses that track position, which is probably going to be pretty important for today's race. So I'm not really big on Kurt Busch today.
Next up, Riddick or Chase Briscoe?
For me, it's Tyler Reddick. He had a few spots further back, and I just it's really just the extra PD, and Tyler Reddick is a guy that I can trust a little bit more. We're just having top of the line speed today.
Sneaky. I did not know why you brought this one up. I'm just going to read it. Larson or Bilicki? When you factor in the price, Bilicki might be the better value.
I can look at my project. I still think I'd probably have Kyle Larson as a better value today. So even though Kyle Larson is the most expensive driver on the slate, he is my second best value just in the projections, just because of all the dominator points he can accrue today. And then we still have Josh Bilicki, the third worst, even though he's cheap.
Yeah. Thoughts on playing Priest starting 13th place? Central seems like it could screw him over, but he's coming in about 15-20% lower than those PD guys.
Yeah, if you're rostering Ryan Priest, it is not a safe play by any means. He has to hold his position, or at least somewhat close to it. You have to hope that Todd Gillen or Harrison Burton running into issues, because there is a very easy path for them to be in the output today. Ryan Priest, Justin Haley, two similar plays here. They have to have a lot go right. But Priest did show a ton of speed, top 4 across the board, but there is a lot of risk here. I think he's worth taking some stabs in tournaments, but wouldn't even think about it in cash games.
Burton or McDowell, single entry DraftKings?
For me, it's Burton. I'll take the 6 spots further back.
So if you got any questions, be sure to line those up in chat. I was just kind of doing a mock lineup, and I just started with Larson and Byron, then put in Austin Dillon. Roster construction comes pretty tough at that point. it goes pretty tough.
Yeah, that's how I started my main build too. I got those 3 in. After that, you have to get 2 scrubs in. I'll tell you that, just to fit another solid driver.
Yeah, honestly, I just kind of looked at that lineup and where I find the struggle with that lineup is, the second dominator when you're talking about having drivers that are going to be more about PD potential.
Yeah, if it's a cash game build, I think you'd only have to have one of the guys up front with William Byron. If it's tournaments, though, I'm going to want to try to get a guy like Chastain in there because I know you can't fit in another like a Ryan Blaney, Alex Bowman type quite easily. You have to go probably triple scrub down low. So getting to that mid range instead of a Reddick, because you only have one guy up front, pivoting to Chastain is probably a good way to go in tournaments.
Speaking of Chastain or Reddick in a FanDuel single entry.
For FanDuel, since dominator points aren't really that important, I would go with Tyler Reddick.
Yeah. JJT says, are you worried about pit road penalties today?
I'm always worried about him, but you're never going to know who's going to get his pit road penalty. You just have to hope it's not your guy.
Yeah. By the way, in terms of drivers that are going to the rear, as someone just asked over in our Discord chat, is that you've got Kurt Busch for steering, Byron for backup car, Todd Gillian for repairs, Burton for repairs, and Balicki a backup car.
Yeah, and the only one that really maybe even slightly changed anything is Kurt Busch because he's starting mid-pack, but everybody else doesn't really matter.
Yeah. Jets World over a score says, would you please rank Logano, Blaney, Bowman, and Truex for a DraftKings single entry?
If it's DraftKings, it would be Blaney, Logano. I forget. Was Bowman
and Truex for the other two?
Okay, it'd be Blaney, Bowman, Logano, Truex for me.
Yeah. We mentioned about, how much you love the Hendrick cars today. Of course, the question about how many Hendrick cars we have here today, and looking at these 4 Hendrick cars, obviously, but they're all at the top. So right. How many realistic Hendrick cars do you think you could slam into a lineup?
You can fit in 3. It is possible. It does not look that great. It's really not my favorite way to go. I am mostly getting to 2, but 3 is possible if you get 3 5K drivers.
By the way, Bob did mention on his Twitter that obviously we're talking about the rain. The race could be official at lap 200 or later. So that is, obviously when we're talking about rain, it has to be somewhat of a thought process of how we're developing our lineups.
It certainly can be. It's just trying to battle the rain is a very hard thing to do when you're building a lineup because it can go either way. Big place differential plays might not have enough time to get up front, but at the same time, the dominator points you're not going to get the full on dom points. And you're looking at a 200 lap race. And in that case, if it was a 200 lap race and I knew that before the race started, I'd be more focused on the place differential guys rather than the dominator points. So it can be very back and forth. And it's not something I'm really trying to build around today.
Yeah. It's the unknown. It's, because you don't want to, potentially put a lineup. You think, hey, they're only going to get 225 laps, but then what happens if they get 400? Now we got 280 dominator points just sitting out there.
Right. And this is what happened at Bristol Dirt, where there was rain in the forecast and everyone thought we were only going to get halfway, but NASCAR did its best job to finish the race, which we did. So if you kind of built around that, you set yourself up for some failure.
DraftKings single entry here, 2v2, Larson and Blaney or Larson and Elliott.
I'm going to go with the double Hendrick stack there.
One of the things I think about that though is I feel like Larson Elliott is going to be now look, they could just smash the slate too. Like it's going to be the pop where that's where I get to the question of, okay, do I think I might be able to get different from the field going the Larson Blaney route? But it's that fear of, okay, those 2 Hendrick cars together could really just smash the slate.
Yeah. And if you are going that Larson Elliott route, instead of using like cheap guys like Burton and Gillen, you could look to guys like Ryan Preece, Justin Haley down low to get away from some of that chalk. You don't have to completely fade the chalk, but you can use chalky plays and just kind of pivot down low and be fine.
And speaking of the Hendrick cars, Chandler brings up this question. He says, if you're playing 2 Hendrick cars, are you playing 2 of the Doms or Larson and Byron? And if so, who's your next dominator in?
For me, it's a mixture of both. I'm not doing one or the other. If I am playing cash today, I am doing Byron plus a dom up front. If I am playing tournaments, I'm willing to do the same thing, but I'm kind of more inclined to go like the Bowman Larson or the Elliott Larson route just to capture those dominator points. And if I am looking for an extra dominator, if I'm going Byron and Larson or someone like that, I would probably get the Ross Chastain quite a bit.
Thoughts on Ryan Preece?
He is cheap. He overexceeded expectations in practice. He's still in the 15 car though, so it could easily fall apart lap 220. I would not be surprised if that happens. So you have to be very careful. But the upside for a top 15 is there.
Of course, if you got any more questions, be sure to line those up in chat. We just got a couple more moments here left in the show, as I mentioned over in DraftKings. Lock coming up here just at 3:09 Eastern time, so right after the top of the hour. McDowell or Burton in a single entry?
For me, it's going to be Burton. They're basically the same play, but Burton starts a little bit further back.
Last man in on DraftKings, Ty Dillon or AJ Allmendinger?
If it's cash, Dillon. If it's a tournament, I'll go with Dinger.
You know, we've had some drivers over the past couple of weeks that have just gone out and surprised us. Is there somebody that you look at and say, you know what, man, I'm not, I don't think he's going to go out there and be a smash spot. I think about Michael McDowell a couple weeks ago. I'm trying to think off the top of my head. I want to say it was maybe someone last week that just, exceeded what we expected. Is there a driver that you go, you know what, maybe this is that driver this week that exceeds expectations?
I'm thinking it might be Keselowski, as ugly as that sounds. But I mean, starting in 20th, I know it's not a ton of practice data, but he was first in the 5 lap. And I know his teammate qualified in the pole. So they have to have some speed in their cars. And they did flash some speed at another short track earlier this season. So it doesn't feel great. And there's a lot of downside with Keselowski. I think he could surprise today.
Yeah. Of course, kind of looking at the ownership when we talk about, DraftKings and obviously the way to get different here today, obviously those top 3 drivers are going to get tons of ownership.
Yeah.
I say it comes down to that question of which combination of the two together is going to be the one that ends up optimal.
So I personally think Larson and Byron's going to be the best way to go. I know Byron's in the back, but I think by the time Larson dominated half the race, it could easily be him or Kyle Larson or Chase Elliott. But by the time William Byron gets there, he could easily be a dominator in this race. I know he's, in a backup car working his way through the field, but I don't really have too many concerns there.
Yeah, I mean, I think you got to look at Ross Chastain. I mean, maybe he's that guy as a potential dominator that could, sneak up on the field here today.
Yeah, if you're betting on just on guys that have been excellent this year, Ross Chastain has been superb, one of the best drivers in NASCAR, and he is not priced like it, so I would take the discount here today.
Yeah, I mean, and it also comes down to that equation with Kyle Larson. Can we, obviously the last 2 weeks have been those solid performances we've seen, but overall the season's been very hit or miss for Kyle Larson.
Yeah, they definitely lost their edge a little bit from going to the next gen cars this season. But he has still been solid. He just hasn't been the lofty expectations we would expect from Kyle Larson, where you just locked him every single week last year and figured out your other 5 drivers. That has not been the case. But today, it looks like the stars are aligning for him to kind of return to form.
And we'll leave on this question, AJ or Todd for DraftKings?
Todd Gill, man, if it's a 1v1, let me check my projections there because they are starting quite a bit further away from each other. So Gilland, I have around 1 point higher projected. So I would go with it slightly into Gilland there.
Of course, appreciate everyone checking out the Awesemo.com NASCAR live before lock show. Of course, we'll be here every Sunday before the NASCAR race. Of course, appreciate just smash that thumbs up button as we exit out the show. Good luck to everyone today, and we will talk to you next week. And huge thanks to our sponsor, PrizePicks. Be sure to check them out, PrizePicks.com. Also check them out in the App Store. Have a good day, everybody.